I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good morning. Good Monday morning,
Yes.
I would say. Yeah, thank you so much for coming and talking about some of these items in terms of our teaching, especially under COVID. And I prepared some questions for you. The very first one I have for you is, what do you recommend as in-class activity that and homework assignments to promote community building among students and faculty? How do we make the necessary connections for retention? Because I asked this question because a lot of faculty members have told me we're just losing these opportunities to be able to these very special connections
Right.
we usually can afford in-person classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, just from conversations with other instructional designers, we've talked about something like that before.
Mhm.
Community building is it. There's no silver bullet for it. You kind
Mhm.
of have to know your students.
All right.
Some of the things that have been more universal
Mhm.
are really focused on the feedback that you're giving to students on assignments or daily activities or whatever it might be, but not
Mhm.
just feedback, in a graded kind of way, but reaching out to individuals, whether it be just for a quick
Mhm.
5 minute chat, just to check in. So during office hours, there's many faculty that are now earmarking, say, a half hour to an hour to just lining up 5 minutes at a time with certain students,
Mhm.
and that way it's just a check-in. How are you doing? Do you have any questions about the class? Even just establishing a little bit of a personal contact.
Yeah.
And that's good for just showing the students they're not just out there on the island by themselves.
Right. Right.
And that personal connection has actually resulted in more cameras going on.
Right.
It's resulted in just more discussion. People are more apt to ask questions and participate just
Mhm.
because they have direct contact with somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that and that's going remote, obviously. In person at this point, we can look at spring later on, but given that everyone's going to be going remote,
Mhm.
Thanksgiving, community building in itself, I think there has to be deliberate effort made during classes to bring everybody in, at the
Right.
very beginning of class, not in the middle. So people talk about how um, people will come into the students will come into the remote class.
Mhm.
They'll turn on they'll connect and then they'll walk away.
Yeah.
If they know ahead of time, if you
Mhm.
tell them ahead of time that there will be instances at the very beginning, that way you get them connected initially,
Mhm.
and throughout, and maybe even at the end.
Mhm.
Set that expectation so they know ahead of time, like, okay, I'm going to be called on, or I'm going to have to participate in an activity, or and as we've already seen, most things that students participate in, they
Yeah.
only give their truest 100% if there's some kind of incentive, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
that sometimes the community building and the accountability that we put on students has to have some kind of reward, which puts a little bit more work on the instructor to possibly do a little bit more grading than they usually do.
Right. Right. Maybe
Um,
something auto graded. Right.
right. I mean, autograde is fine, as long as there's a personal touch somewhere within there.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
gets auto graded, but then you go into, say it's a quiz,
Right.
Canvas quiz. So you go into the Canvas quiz,
Mhm.
and you respond with some kind of feedback. Or if it's polling,
Mhm.
uh, then make sure you're using a system that you can go back in and see how a student actually did when
Right.
they responded to the polls. So you can say, I noticed you missed 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 5.
Mhm.
If you have, let me explain, blah blah, just so they can see that you're looking. Right. That's part of the problem. They don't even think
Yeah,
you're
that is true. Yeah. And then
uh,
I think some of these techniques we use, right, in-person classes. So you show up a little bit early and you have these small chats with your students. And then
exactly.
even after class, you stay a little bit. But you can do the same thing with probably Zoom meetings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just comes down to a little. It puts a little extra effort on us, right?
Right. More effort. Yes.
The biggest the the question I've been getting a lot lately is, what can I do now to prepare for
Uh-huh.
after Thanksgiving? And
Yeah.
my first thought, and usually I say this out loud, but my first thought is always, well, the biggest difference between now and March is that we had a 6 month head start, or 5 month head start.
Right, right, right.
So if you're just starting to do it now, um, it's going to be, just plan on spending a little bit more time thinking
Uh-huh.
about deliberate ways that you're going to engage or you're going to talk with your students.
Yeah,
That's the hardest part. It takes the time to plan these things.
right. Yeah, I've seen, in some of these publications talking about maybe sending some sort of a digital postcard in the form of videos. I mean, those are, of course, extra efforts. You
It
just
is.
like 5 minute video just saying hello to students and those types of things.
Right.
And
I mean, people are going to see, though, after Thanksgiving,
hmm
if you've established a rapport before Thanksgiving,
hmm
then it's going to carry over. But
hmm
if you haven't,
yeah,
then it's going to be that much more difficult to establish. You won't be able to come back after Thanksgiving
hmm
for 2 weeks and grab everybody's attention. If you haven't gotten it by this point, then
right, right.
that's going to be a problem. And we're also a little bit hamstrung by the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we have the alternative grade. So some students are just checking out. We can't do anything about it.
hmm
So it's just a matter of the reality is just engaging the students that are choosing to come back.
Yeah, and all we can do is always our best. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, when you said there's no silver bullet, of course, yeah, there is
Right.
no such thing. But at least we have to, try. That's what I.
Right.
But so yeah, there are a lot of these non-technological things we can do, right? Sending more
Mm.
emails, paying more attention, those types of things. But are there any sort of technology solutions you recommend in terms of engaging students more effectively?
Uh, it's a hard question to answer only because I don't like throwing technology out there just for,
Hmm
hey, everyone use this.
Oh yeah, I know.
It has to have a pedagogical purpose.
Of
So
course, yeah.
things that are up and coming, right? And I'm still doing a little bit deeper dive into Top Hat, which has been advertised many times on Canvas.
hmm
But Top Hat uh, it has a lot of different features to it, but one of the more robust things is the polling.
Uh,
The polling in this case can link to, and they have built-in quizzes, and you can put PowerPoints with quizzes right in the middle of the PowerPoints. But all
uh,
these things are now integrated with Canvas, so there's a
oh,
little bit more accountability
yeah.
with Top Hat. Now, obviously, adopting a brand new interface, brand new technology, there's a learning curve. So,
hmm
is it great for after Thanksgiving? Probably not, but it might be something to investigate, especially in the 3 weeks leading up to this in January, leading up to the new semester. There's going to be training opportunities for Top Hat for especially early adopters.
I see.
Other than that, it just comes down to what exactly are you having students do. I mean, I personally find that the G Suite,
Yeah.
gsuite.psu.edu, I find a lot of helpful tools in there. Obviously, Google Docs,
Mm-hmm.
something that it's nice to have group discussions and breakout sessions, right? But if there's no takeaway from it, if there's nothing that they end the discuss, if they just end the discussion and come back to class and you ask one person to report out, the one if there were three people checked out and only one person thinking about it, that's the one who's going to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually make them accountable
Mm-hmm.
to put their thoughts down in a Google Doc and they all have to contribute something, I don't, however it might be, even just do a little note taking of how their conversation was going,
Mm-hmm.
uh, a little more accountability, a little more engagement.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jamboard's in there. Google Slides are in there for a team presentation. There's a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of different things. I tend to like the G Suite, and the learning curve is minimal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, of all the technology, it's probably the one that I would say
Yeah.
the easiest to adopt.
Yeah. And we have access to it already.
Yes.
Yeah. Has a lot of these tools we haven't probably explored, like Jamboard. I think is one of the ones.
There are a lot of instructors now using Jamboard. I've helped a bunch of faculty, and they've actually started a lot themselves, and then come to me just to say, like, am I using it effectively?
Mm-hmm.
Um, So people in the math departments, people and anyone doing group work,
Mhm.
where they can do something a little bit more visible.
Mhm.
That's been great. People have been using it for their presentations. They've built their presentations instead of doing a PowerPoint. They put their PowerPoint into a Jamboard and
Yeah,
then allow students to annotate on top of it or do other things with it. And it's all captured there, and they can share it out later on. So
yeah.
lots of applications to it.
You're saying Jamboard is much more effective than something like the whiteboard built into Zoom.
My opinion, yes,
Yeah,
because you can capture it. If you're recording your class, then they can see your whiteboard later on and review it. But
right,
Jamboard's a bit more interactive.
right.
People can put things directly on there. If they have questions, they can organize things for you. That
Mhm,
just a little bit more interactive.
mhm, mhm.
But again, your instruction has to lend itself to more interaction.
Mhm.
Can't force it.
Right, right, right. Exactly. Yeah. Somehow you have to design your classes that way, so
Right.
there are more interactions during the class. I mean, if it's all about just lecturing the whole class
Right.
period, then it's not going to work.
No. No.
But you can help our faculty come up with, the right design for their classes, of course.
Right. Yeah.